In 1936, a young German journalist named Konrad Heiden wrote a book called Hitler, a Biography. In it, he described the street fighting between communists and Nazis, which characterized much of early 1930s Germany. But one interesting thing he mentioned about the paramilitary Nazis, known as the SA, or the Brown Shirts, was that there were large numbers of communists and social democrats among them. Many of the stormtroopers were called beefsteaks, brown outside and red within. Jests were retailed, such as the following. One SA man says to another, "In our stormtroop, there are 3 Nazis, but we shall soon have spewed them out." Some historians have surmised that these young men just liked to fight. They didn't really care who they were fighting for or for what cause. They were angry at the establishment, and for good reason. Germany was left in a horrible state by World War I and the disastrous monetary policies of the Weimar Republic. The people who felt left behind were going to express their rage in any way they could. When the seat of German government, the Reichstag building, was set aflame in 1933, Nazis accused communist agitators of setting the blaze. In reality, it's likely that the Nazis started the fire at the Reichstag themselves and scapegoated the communists in order to justify a brutal crackdown. Before I go any further, let me just say that the United States in 2021 is not the same as Germany in 1933. And even if the United States was on the exact same trajectory as Nazi Germany, we haven't even seen the Weimar inflation yet, which would put us somewhere around 1921. Prior to World War I, one US dollar was worth 4.2 German marks. But the Germans owed massive debts to pay back the other nations for the war. With no way to come up with the money, they simply printed more and more marks. By 1923, a single US dollar was worth 4.2 trillion marks. Did you get your stimulus check yet? But that's also what's so concerning. All this unrest, and we haven't even witnessed widespread economic devastation yet. It seems to be only the beginning. People are angry, and people have good reason to be angry, whether it's over police killings or a completely corrupt political process. People feel no agency over their own situation or their government, and people want to take that control back. But in 1930s Germany, if power hadn't gone to the Nazis, it would have gone to the communists, funded by Soviet Russia, which ended up with a much higher death count than Nazi Germany. There comes a point where there is no good political solution. There's no right party to throw your support behind, no collective action that will right the ship. Take the absurd $1 trillion relief bill that Congress passed just before the holidays, that handed out billions of dollars to foreign governments like Sudan, Vietnam, $33 million to Venezuela for democracy programs, $10 million to Pakistan for gender studies. I was shocked to actually agree with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, when she said, "This isn't governance, this is hostage taking." Well, guess what? She voted for the bill anyway. The president also heavily criticized the bill before he signed it into law. Call me crazy, but I thought politicians debasing the dollar to hand out billions of dollars to foreign governments was a bigger assault on our nation than a bunch of idiots rioting at the Capitol. If politicians aren't afraid of being torn apart by an angry mob, is this even America? And by the way, I also enjoyed watching the police precinct in Minneapolis burn to the ground this summer. AOC said around that time that protests are supposed to make people feel uncomfortable. Well, as Congress cowered in fear from the people, that was a nice change from the people having to fear their government. Too bad they could face 10 years in prison under a National Monuments Protection executive order that Trump signed when protesters against police brutality were tearing down statues this past summer. No meaningful change is coming to Washington, even if we did have free and fair elections. Antifa and the right-wingers will continue their street battles, likely only intensifying. We'll see more Occupy Seattle Chaz takeovers, police stations like the precinct in Minneapolis set on fire, and more violent protests surrounding government buildings. Really ask yourself, and be realistic, what would it take for everything to just settle down and go back to normal? Flipping a page on a calendar to reveal a new digit at the end of the year, shockingly, didn't do the trick. Keep in mind that the party of the woke mobsters just took control of Congress and the White House. Higher taxes, more draconian COVID lockdowns, and more regulation is a given, but they could also wield enormous power to punish their political enemies. As much as I enjoyed watching politicians cower in fear from the people, whatever truly happened at the storming of the Capitol, it will be used as an excuse for increased government surveillance, new policing powers, more weapons regulations, controls on free speech, and who knows whatever else the Bolsheviks think up. I never want to be alarmist, but if this isn't a neon sign flashing that it's time to take action, then I don't know what is. and I don't mean taking action by voting harder or joining the protests. Get your rock-solid Plan B in order starting today, so that as tensions escalate, you have options. Whether that means protecting your savings from inflation or getting a second residency so that you have a place to exit to in an emergency. I'm down here in Puerto Rico, and it already does feel a little bit of distance from everything that's happening in the United States. Now, I don't really care about parties so much, but it's hard for me to deny that, especially in my own personal circumstances, I'm going to have less freedom with the Democrat president, a Democrat Congress in control, that if they try to make Puerto Rico a state, I could lose my tax incentives. But that's okay, because I have a plan B. Gaining residency is important. It means you have another place to go. Gaining citizenship is even better. Having gold and silver to protect your savings from inflation. And also, I think it's time to start taking cryptocurrencies seriously, because the amount of money that the government is printing right now is a serious problem, and it could lead to serious inflation. That deserves a whole nother topic all by itself, and I'll also be happy to devote a whole nother video to what I'm doing for my Plan B and explain a little bit more about the Plan B philosophy, starting with the fact that I'm taking it directly from Sovereign Man, another website that I write for. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you're all safe. I hope you're all prospering. I hope you're going to have a great 2021. I'm Joe Jarvis. Come back and see me again soon.